This came up in a friend of mine. Thanks, Fritz, by the way, for sending me this. A friend of mine sent me a link to a bill that's been proposed in New York, and I may as well start at the beginning because without the context, it makes a bit less sense. So we're going to wind back time to the 6th of October in New York in 2020 when Andrew Cuomo, the governor of New York, in conjunction with Bill de Blasio, the mayor of New York, decided that they were going to close non-essential businesses in New York City areas which have seen drastic spikes in COVID positivity rates. And he told this to Jewish community leaders on a conference call, as reported by Hamodia.com, which is a Jewish newspaper. Cuomo said, "We have to close the schools. We have to in New York City. It's going to be the businesses in those communities, non-essential businesses." But the governor also said that religious gatherings were a potential larger cause of virus spread, and the purpose of the call was to urge leaders to encourage compliance with COVID guidelines. The previous day, Cuomo had warned that he would close synagogues if leaders did not agree to enforce guidelines of maintaining only 50% capacity. On the call, Cuomo frankly admitted that businesses were not driving the rise in cases, but rather unmasked gatherings. He did not explain why he was closing the businesses or schools, but he even admitted that they were not the primary concerns for coronavirus spread. And so this ended up looking really bad because Cuomo seems to have been specifically going after New York Jewish communities. Now, New York's Jewish communities are something like 13% of the population of New York. There's a lot of Jews in New York, and these run the gamut between secular Jewish people who are not part of the more orthodox and tightly knit Hasidic communities who are very religious and follow particular religious holidays and festivals and rules and guidelines. But I mean, I don't care, it doesn't matter to me what they do as long as they're not breaking hurting anyone else. But this is essentially the thrust of Cuomo's point, though. But even Newsweek, the next day, Newsweek published this, and I found this opinion piece really funny. Leftists running the Big Apple and Empire State have settled on a convenient COVID super spreader scapegoat of choice. Their choice should be surprising to no one: the Jews. It's like, really, Newsweek? Really, is that? To be fair, he's right. Leftists do have a long history of persecuting Jews. Leftists of both the national and international variety have persecuted Jews all through the 20th century and before, in fact. But anyway, so Cuomo targets the Orthodox Jewish community and the identity of Orthodox Jewish, believing that these religious gatherings, he says, have been a problem for weeks, completely abandoning any sort of semblance of neutrality. He's not calling out like Muslims or Catholics for the same thing. It's expressly the Jews. He'd flagged 20 hotspot zip codes around clustered in various New York metropolitan areas, which are, surprise, surprise, and again, this Newsweek's reporting, in predominantly Jewish areas of Brooklyn and Queens. As law professor Josh Blackman noted, the commission did not impose similar crippling restrictions on at least 6 New York City zip codes with similar COVID-19 positivity rates that, surprise, are not predominantly Jewish. So you've got areas of New York that have these COVID spikes, and Cuomo's like, these ones with Jews in can have special lockdowns. Those other ones don't need special lockdowns, and I'm not even going to explain myself. Don't know what to tell you. It just doesn't look good, but we're not finished. It gets worse, right? So then on the 9th of October, the Jewish Orthodox leaders naturally were like, well, hang on, we have constitutional rights. You can't just do this. And so they appealed. They filed lawsuits against New York State against these newly ordered closures, and filed a complaint in federal court in Brooklyn, seeking a protective order blocking Cuomo's executive order. But a federal judge refused to do it. Judge Kyo Matsumoto issued a ruling on Friday after an emergency hearing that said the state had an interest in protecting public safety, so shut up. Cuomo can expressly single out Jews and then shut you down. So on October the 15th, Jewish groups decided to sue Cuomo themselves. So they had sued him for issuing a, quote, blatantly anti-Semitic coronavirus order, restricting religious services in Jewish areas just before 3 sequential Jewish holy days. Now, I'm not really one to point and go racist, anti-Semite, all this sort of stuff. But it is hard to tell them that they're wrong, because he does seem to be expressly targeting these Jewish areas, even though there are other non-Jewish areas that have exactly the same kind of problems.
I mean, certainly by Democrat standards, he's already gone far over the line into becoming an anti-Semite.
Oh yeah, by the standards of the left. I mean, it's, but you couldn't not call him an anti-Semite. So I can completely see why they would. But even from the standard of someone who doesn't like these kind of labels, I mean, he is looking kind of
A little sus.
Yeah, he really seems to not like the Jews in particular. But anyway. So according to the lawsuit, Cuomo's anti-Semitic, creating religious observance-based, colour-coded hotspot zones directed towards particular Jewish communities. And what he had done is, on a map, basically, he'd outlined in red these, what are effectively Jewish ghettos. That he's created these cluster hotspots that are predominantly Jewish, red-lined around, that they're not allowed to leave, and they're not allowed to operate in. So these locked-down Jewish ghettos Andrew Cuomo has created. And the Jews are like, okay, we'll take legal action. The judge's like, no. It's like, okay. And so, so okay. I don't know what to say. This looks really bad. Like it's comical how clownish and like how openly clownishly Nazi-ish Cuomo ends up looking, but we're not done. On the 21st of October, it was raised maybe that he should apologise. Maybe it's wrong to target the Jews for being Jewish, or I don't know, dirty coronavirus spreaders, or whatever it is he was framing it as. And he was like, "No."
Could you have a worse PR operation?
No. But he was like, "No, I'm not going to apologise." It's like, okay, well, interesting. He says, "I'm sorry that they feel the disruption. I'm sorry that they are disrupted. Their religious ceremonies are disrupted. How many people can they have in a synagogue is disrupted. How many people they can have at a wedding is disrupted. The operation of their schools is disrupted. I'm sorry for that. But how you feel about being targeted for being Jewish? Nah, I'm not even bothered. Not even." He says, "In the same way that I'm sorry to the Catholic community, the Muslim community, to all New Yorkers. I'm sorry that we're having to go through this. I'm sorry that people are dying. I'm sorry the state has to impose disruptions on your life. I'm sorry that we had to close your businesses, which may mean you lose your business."
Hang on, is he apologising to the people of New York or the Jews there?
No, he's apologising to the people of New York, not the Jews.
Okay.
Right, specifically,
in my head, I'm hearing some dog whistles there.
He's expressly universalizing this apology. So it's like, well, I'm apologizing to everyone, not to you. I mean, he literally said no.
No, but he's apologizing to the people of New York for the super spreaders of COVID.
Yeah, I didn't even interpret it that way.
That's how I'm interpreting it. I'm like, Jesus Christ.
Maybe he was. It's like, Jesus Christ, Andrew, right? Like, I mean, I have no thoughts on the issue beyond these are people who are, they have constitutional rights, and you seem to have a particular animus against them. Maybe you should leave the Jews alone. Like, I totally...
Cuomo, please.
Yeah. Cuomo, look,
let my people go.
Yeah. Like, I'm in total solidarity with the Jews of New York, right? And anyway, so, I mean, he's not wrong that, like, Muslims and Catholics and the Jews, they didn't go into like a full lockdown, but they had to make sure that their mosques and churches were at like 50% capacity and things like this. But he was not happy with the fact that the Jews, I guess, in his mind, had not done enough or had not followed the rules closely enough, and they were getting particular spikes of COVID.
Because that's the thing, these are religious groups, so they'll be religiously meeting, which is permitted under the Constitution under all circumstances.
Yes.
So even if there is a pandemic, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But he had a specific problem with Jews meeting in synagogue to do this.
Yeah. And like they pointed out, there are other locations where they're getting these kind of COVID hotspots, probably because of religious gatherings as well, because that's a very easy way to spread it. And he did nothing.
If it happens in a mosque or a Catholic church...
Didn't redline the Muslim areas or the Catholic areas. No. He redlined the Jewish areas. That's it. That's all you need to know. So anyway, fast forward to 25th of October. There were the Jews for Trump protests. And I covered these at the time, but I didn't realize quite how deep this had gone until I'd researched this. But and I was living for these protests. I absolutely love this. And this is the kind of sort of positive, incorporative American identity that Trump has been presenting. Whenever someone is being essentially tyrannized by a Democrat governor, they can come out and go, no, I'm for Trump. And Trump will, you know that Trump is deeply behind this kind of attitude. So yeah, I want freedom. I want them to have their rights. I want them to be able to operate. You know, we're not going to live in fear. And I totally love it. 11 people were arrested at this because of counter protests attacking Jews in New York. Giuliani was speaking there, and he's like just making great points. He says, I would love to have had a campaign commercial of it and put it in the middle of America and say, who would you prefer over the next 4 years? This was before the election, obviously. This group of foul-mouthed people who don't seem to have vocabulary beyond 3 words, or these very nice Jewish people who are driving in the car and not saying anything back and not doing anything other than exercising their right to say they're for Donald Trump. Totally agree. And that's been the consistent pattern of Trump supporters. This kind of silent revolution where it's like, look, I'm not angry at you. I'm just going to vote for Trump. I'm just going to do it. And I don't care what you call me. That's where it is. We've got, this is the distinction of values. You are weird authoritarian control freaks who seem to kind of hate certain groups. I'm for everyone living freely, you know? But anyway, the Daily Wire, this coming back to New York now, in November, the Daily Wire had said, in the past weekend, the Governor Cuomo had condemned a Hasidic synagogue in Brooklyn for hosting a secret maskless wedding with thousands of guests. And apparently I'm probably not allowed to root for that. But that was in blatant disregard of the law. It's illegal. Well, maybe you should do something about it, Chris. Andrew, what are you going to do?
Pretty sure redlining Jewish districts of a state is also illegal, but... Like the reason I'm a bit hung up on that is that it's actually something the Luftwaffe did.
Yeah.
So when they invaded Poland, they had a map of Warsaw, military targets first, and then they had the civilian targets, and they literally took a red X out and red X'd certain districts and said if you have any spare bombs, that's where to drop them.
Well, so Cuomo said this was a blatant disregard of the law. It's illegal. It was also disrespectful to the people of New York. Do you think that Hitler ever said that the Jews were disrespectful to the people of Germany? I mean, they are the people of New York. Like, Jews are people of New York, Chris.
It's exclusive language, isn't it?
You have just separated Jews from being people of New York. You absolute Nazi.
God, there are so many jokes.
It's awful, right? But then, this has been proposed, I think it was yesterday this was proposed, which is a New York bill to create coronavirus camps. And it's like, okay, who's Cuomo putting in those camps? Right? This is wild. This is absolutely wild. So the bill is currently in a committee. It hasn't gone through to the vote yet. But this is what it says. The summary. This bill relates to the removal of cases, contacts, and carriers of communicable diseases that are potentially dangerous to the public health. Such person or group of persons shall be detained in a medical facility or other appropriate facility or premises designated by the governor or his or her delegee and complying with subdivision of Section 5 of this section. So COVID camps for Jews.
So Cuomo would have the power to set up a medical facility in which he would house
groups of people. Or other appropriate facility.
Yeah, and house people or groups of people who are accused of being super spreaders or carriers of the virus.
We'll just call them dirty.
I don't want to take on Cuomo's phrasing. I don't want to be associated with that.
But that's what he's saying. That's what he's saying. These people are diseased.
That's why I don't want to be associated with Cuomo and his party. But
yeah, of course. I mean, how? Like it's unreal how this is coming back. And it's like, okay, so you've ghettoized a particular section of the population. You've locked them down in an exclusive lockdown that's just for them. You're preventing them from leaving.
They're not part of people of New York.
Exactly.
I also apologise to the people of New York for all the spreaders.
Yep. And now we're finding legal ways to remove them from the population and keep them in camps so they don't infect the rest of you.
I disavow.
Yeah. Unreal. It's not surprising, though, that like Reason Magazine, Eugene Volok's... I love Volok Conspiracy, by the way. I've followed Eugene Volok for a long time.
What is this?
It's just Eugene Volok's commentary. He's a lawyer. And he's always been quite based, frankly. And where was he before Reason? I can't remember where he was before Reason. But essentially they're like, look, this guy is basically a Nazi, you know, and it's hard to say that they're wrong. I mean, they're like in the mid 14th century throughout Europe, Jews were scapegoated for spreading the Black Death. Rumors spread that Jews poisoned food, water, and even the air. Stop me if you've heard this one before.
I love some people in the chat being like, but at least Cuomo's on the right side of history.
Oof. Oof.
Like, that's what he'd be arguing. But,
Well-
here's the thing. If it was the Jewish community, if he was able to show some data and say, look, in high Jewish population density districts, there's an increase, probably because of cultural reasons, something like this.
Yep.
Therefore, we ought to relate our response to that data.
Yep.
Okay, but that's not what's going on, as you said.
Why wouldn't you do it in the other spots that have the same problem?
You have this issue with religious areas, probably because of communal worship,
Sure.
which is legal under the US Constitution, and therefore you would tailor it to that, but he's not. He's tailoring it to the Jewish communal worship.
Yeah. I mean, he's literally redlining the Jews and not the other religious communities who also have COVID spikes.
Wait, what? Because that means even by Republican standards, because it's not the outcome is wrong. The procedure there is obviously biased as well.
Deeply. And again, fundamentally, constitutionally, they should not be doing this. I this is why I love the American Constitution. These are hard and fast rules that should not be breached. But Cuomo, not being a constitutionalist,
Cuomo doesn't agree.
Yeah, being something of a German in this regard, doesn't care.
What is Cuomo? He's Italian, isn't it?
Of course, he's Italian. Yeah,
Yeah, it's always the access, man.
it is. It is. Anyway, so so that's good news if you live in New York, and
Well, it's good news if you're Cuomo, I guess. It's not
Yeah.
good news for anyone else who could be put into the
of
medical
course,
facility.
Good news if you're in the category of a person of New York. If you're not in that category, then it's not good news. Again, we disavow. Cuomo is a monster, and we stand with the Jews for Trump.